Welcome to Poverty Proof, how the rich think differently and how you can train your brain for wealth. Today we're going to look at 6 different behaviors, mindsets, philosophies, approaches to life that tend to keep people poor. This is from the brand new audio version of Poverty Proof for Entrepreneurs. Folks, if you're enjoying these videos, please do like them, and if you feel that they could help someone, please do share them.
These 6 people stay poor. 1. The person who offers no value. Doing nothing is not valuable to anyone. If you refuse to make, grow, add, learn, think, help, shape, or contribute in any way, then in an economic sense you stand still. You become valueless. As a human being, you may have intrinsic value, but economically, zero activity equals zero value, which equals zero wealth. Doing useful things is valuable. Educating yourself causes you to become more valuable. Working for a boss and thereby freeing up their time is offering value in the form of labor and trust. Creating products or services that make life better for others creates value. Being a homemaker, someone who supports their spouse and makes it possible for them to apply themselves in other ways, is also a form of value creation. Indeed, all through human history, a supportive spouse has been one of the most valuable things we have sought out. Friendship, support, guidance, and trust are all forms of value, and all enable us to build. Offering no value is a path to poverty. The universe doesn't require that everyone contribute at the level of a Mozart or a Musk. But it does require that everyone contribute. And that is why it continually confronts us with small tests. 2. The person who can't be trusted to pass the test. Now and then, the universe hands us a test of character. Then it withdraws, waits, and watches to see what we will do next. Can we be trusted? Are we fundamentally people of value? If so, we may graduate to the next level. If not, we stay where we are. Fail enough of these tests and they tend to stop coming around. The same applies to nations. Default on enough payments, show corruption in enough dealings, and the world ceases to offer these opportunities. But repay investments with honesty and value, and the investments will keep coming. I am not the only business coach who believes that trust is at the foundation of all success. It is the essential building block of civilization, and also of good business. If you can be trusted, you can keep moving up in the world. If you can't, well, then you can't. Trust provides multinational corporations with their brand strength, equity, and continuity. And trust repaid also enables the poorest of the poor to graduate to the next level on the socio-economic rung. In the world of human value, trust is the unit of progress. Imagine this on the most rudimentary level. You're trying to feed a family and you seek out an entry-level job. The only thing you can find is basic. A boss hires you to sweep his factory floor each night. The pay is minimal and the working conditions are hard. Yet there is pay, and this does represent a step up for you, albeit a small one. How do you repay this small degree of trust that was placed in you? Do a poor job, fail to turn up, or steal from the company, and you will lose even the small amount entrusted to you. It will not be offered again. However, repay that trust with excellence, exceeding expectations and doing more than you were asked, and you get to keep the job. You may even receive a small promotion, the right to be entrusted with just that bit more. That's an improvement. Repay that extra trust with further excellence, and you can be permitted to graduate again, perhaps with a larger promotion. That is the beginning of momentum, and it relies on passing tests. When the universe hands you a test, any test, it is important to try to see through the circumstances to the underlying principle. Sure, the boss is awful. The conditions are rough. The work is difficult and possibly boring. But it's not about these external factors. It's about you and your internal character, your human capital. It's a test. can the universe trust you to pass it? If not, you close the door on all your wealth potential. If wealth is about value, and value is about human capital, then the cornerstone of this entire edifice is trust. If you can pass the trust test, and pass it every time, then you can keep moving on. You become the kind of person who is always eligible to graduate. As for the person who can't pass the trust test, my enduring bet is that regardless of what they try, and at what level they try it, they are bound to remain poor. 3. The person who believes that government will provide the value. You're going to rely on the Spanish king to go and get the gold? Really? Or worse, you're going to rely on a Marxist, socialist government system to confiscate wealth from your fellow compatriots, then redistribute it to you. Do you know what happens when they do? The people who know how to generate wealth simply leave. The whole country becomes poorer. This Be Kind to the Poor experiment has been tried in over 30 nations. Every time, it has led to catastrophic poverty and often to mass starvation. It also typically gives rise to dictatorships because it is premised on a strong central government with far-reaching powers doing a great deal of taking. This system in no way generates value. Its fatal flaw is that it destroys the conditions necessary for that generation. The reason it doesn't work is because getting gold doesn't teach anyone how to develop human capital. You get the gold, you spend it, it is gone. Then no more gold comes in, and families starve. It isn't even a short-term solution. The very people who get the redistributed wealth invariably end up poorer after the experiment. The closest example of this to where I live in South Africa would be the millions of Zimbabweans who are now among the poorest people on earth after decades under the Marxist-Leninist leader Robert Mugabe. Their country used to be known as the breadbasket of Africa, back when its emphasis was on generation, not distribution. Meanwhile, in other countries, people in high-trust cultures are learning how to generate wealth. These people will grow continually richer. If you have been waiting for the Spanish king to hand you the gold, permit me to guide you onto a different and better path. The simple truth is this: governments do not generate wealth. People do. People make wealth through trade and through businesses that generate value, and then they form governments to uphold the rule of law and to ensure that infrastructure works so that they can continue to make money. Socialism is just a parasite on top of that. Can governments contribute to the generation of wealth? Yes. Although they don't generate it themselves, they can enable people to generate meaningful profits. By far, the best way that governments impact wealth is by providing good infrastructure and upholding the rule of law, which is to say, creating the conditions for trust. Then, quite frankly, they should get out of the way. Where governments uphold the rule of law, ensure that contracts are honored, and keep the infrastructure working, the people do the rest, and nations, including their governments, become wealthy. Here's an interesting example. One of the greatest reasons Britain enjoyed such strong human capital was that its courts upheld contracts all the way back to the Middle Ages, and even against its own citizens. If a Belgian or a Frenchman appealed to a British court alleging that he had been cheated by a local merchant, the court would try the case and often find in favor of the foreigner. This created a scenario of high trust, which attracted further people wanting to do business in Britain. Trust is the foundation of everything. Where it exists, economies flourish. Being a trustworthy business owner creates the conditions by which you can flourish. 4. The person who sees their career as a life support system, not a wealth-creating mechanism. What happens if you do provide value, and you do generate wealth, but then you squander more than you keep? You may make a small or large amount of money. Regardless of the size of your income, how you think about it makes a difference. Do you view it as an important source of potential wealth? Or do you simply see it as a way to meet the bills each month, something that merely keeps you going? The person who views their income as the means by which they will become wealthy will treat that income very differently. To them, it will become critical, even precious, and they will manage it carefully, nurturing and growing it at every step. They will be excellent custodians, setting each penny to work to earn more pennies, and they will never waste their money on trinkets. To them, waste is a betrayal of their future potential to become rich. The logic is sound. Buy 100 trinkets, and what have you got? A box of junk to throw out in 10 years' time, instead of a sizable amount of wealth that could have been hard at work improving your reality. By contrast, the person who merely sees income as a support system for their lifestyle is unlikely to ever become wealthy on the simple grounds that they are not planning to. This switch in beliefs dramatically affects behavior. Load the former in your mind, and every incoming cent will become part of your bigger plan. You will properly value it, conserve it, and grow it. Even a person working a humble job who nevertheless sees their income as their path to wealth can outstrip a higher earner who fails to value their income and thus doesn't use it strategically. 5. The person who believes that soft skills aren't for them. I see this problem repeatedly. The individual who asserts that volunteering to speak or to lead is not for them, and then they wonder why others are promoted ahead of them. Or the entrepreneur who doesn't believe in selling, or who doesn't want to do any marketing or interacting with customers because that seems like shameless bragging. Surely the work should just speak for itself. This dynamic typically plagues the technically minded person who wants to be left alone to do what they are good at. That is all very well, but then you don't have a business. You have a skill, and you are capable of doing a job. That means you need a boss who can turn it into a business. By contrast, becoming your own boss, and therefore becoming wealthy, entails a certain amount of soft skills: speaking to and teaching people, creating networks, appearing in public, talking to your customers, getting your message out, all the messy things that people like accountants and engineers tend to avoid. Please don't let that mindset become a poverty trap for you. Most of these things are not as difficult as they seem. You will still get to do the thing you love, but because you choose to incorporate some business-generating soft skills, you will get to do these things at a higher level and for greater total wealth. That is a good deal. And don't panic regarding which of these things you will need to do. I will point them out to you. When you see them broken down into steps, you will likely realize that they are actually not that bad. Bear with me. My goal is to make this easier for you, not harder. But we must at least begin by admitting what is necessary. 6. And finally, the entrepreneur who sets out without a map of the traps. Statistically, 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs fail within the first 2 years. In most cases, the reasons for these failures are simple and perfectly preventable. These aspiring business owners fall into very basic traps. They focus on the wrong aspect of their business and neglect the things that are important. They fail to reach or persuade the right market. They don't delight key customers sufficiently to get them to come back for more, or they simply don't know enough about how to lead a team of people. Finally, and most commonly, they don't manage their cash flow. And for this reason, servicing large deals actually breaks their business rather than enriches it. We will talk more about that. Generally, it's a combination of 2 or more of these issues. That is all rather bleak, but it's important to know this so that you don't fall into these traps yourself. Now, let's get to the good stuff. Who gets rich? The person who learns how to generate value gets rich. Take John D. Rockefeller. The first thing he did initially to become wealthy was to sell paraffin to Americans. At the time, there was no electricity available to most people. Paraffin allowed them to light lamps in their homes, gaining a few extra hours of productivity each day, where before they had little option but to go to bed when the sun went down. This provided great value on a mass level. Fascinatingly, embittered people today refer to characters like Rockefeller as robber barons without ever explaining who exactly they robbed, and simultaneously pretending away the value they created. Would it have been better if people had spent their evenings in darkness, unable to function? The person who practices sound principles and behaviors of wealth generation gets rich. Among entrepreneurs, it's not necessarily the brightest or the most privileged who make it. It is the ones who focus on the right things and ignore the wrong things. It is the ones who successfully attract, persuade, and keep on delighting customers. These entrepreneurs create value and generate wealth. It is the ones who get their teams to stay focused and consistent so that the value they offer remains high and the wealth keeps coming in. It looks a little different for everyone, and you don't have to understand every single entrepreneurial principle. You just have to understand and implement enough of the good ones so that you create excellent value and show the world that you do so while making it easy for people to buy from you. That's enough to tip the balance in your favor. The more you learn, the faster it goes, and the greater your wealth becomes. Enough of these ideas will change your trajectory from failing to getting richer. And that will do.